Hello everyone, I'm Ducky Wucky, and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is finally back after 2 long years of waiting. I and a lot of other fans considered last season as a true return to form, so I am so excited to see what these new episodes have in store. I will be reviewing and then ranking the 3 episodes we have so far. Alright, so let's not waste any more time. Let's jump right into... Also, warning, I will be spoiling all the twists and all the jokes of all the episodes, so if you want to go in with fresh eyes, I would suggest you watch it now and then come back later. So we got a little extra Sunny content this year, because they had a crossover with another show I really love, Abbott Elementary. I can't lie, I was very nervous for this crossover. I was worried it was going to be sort of like a jumping the shark moment, or it was just going to be kind of awkward, and I wasn't sure if the 2 shows could go together. But I was delightfully surprised, and I'd say out of every other show on any streaming service or any network television, honestly, Abbott Elementary is the best fit. This is very much in the vein of The Gang Gives Back. The format change is a little bit jarring, but it honestly works shockingly well, and I love seeing the way that the characters react to the camera, with Dee absolutely hogging it, and Dennis for some reason wanting to be behind the camera. Honestly, I don't think that makes sense for Dennis's character, because even in his tapes, as we all know, he's still in front of the camera. One thing I loved about this episode in particular was how the likability of the Abbott Elementary characters made the deplorable nature of the It's Always Sunny gang like stick out like a sore thumb. Sometimes when you're watching It's Always Sunny, everyone is so weird that you forget just how weird and terrible the gang is. One of my favorite aspects of the show is that the entire Abbott Elementary gang is trying their best to welcome them and trying to see the best in them until they're pushed to their absolute limits. Also, another detail I would like to call out is that Dennis seems to have dyed hair in this episode. I'm not sure if that's just Glenn Howerton doing that. I know he's changed his hair a lot for roles. My headcanon is that Dennis is dyeing his hair again, and I think that's infinitely funnier, so that's what I choose, Death of the Author. Jacob trying to teach Charlie to read is adorable. I love Dee and Janine's dynamic, and Janine slowly unraveling is very funny. And Janine calling Dee a bird was incredible, because that makes me think that everyone around her just genuinely comes to that conclusion after knowing her for a little bit, which I think is hysterical. I mean, look at me. I'm giving Dee in The Gang Gives Back, low-key. Next, we have what I would consider the 2-parter, which is The Gang F's Up Abbott Elementary. You obviously need to watch both in order to get it. I assume that people who don't know about the crossover might be very confused by this, because this is like truly supplementary material. It takes place in the gaps between, and because of the gap between the 2 episodes, I went in thinking that I would remember enough, but then I ended up being pretty confused about the timeline of things. But I thought this episode was really good. It felt a bit off. Seeing Ava cue in a title card was like super surreal, by the way. I love the reveal of Frank's grand master plan. That's very in character of him, and I think that's very reminiscent of older seasons, kind of like the chicken and air miles scam. Even though they're both in the documentary style, the format and the mood of both shows is, I think, still perfectly retained for what it is. If anything, it just reminds me of the episode of It's Always Sunny where they have a murder documentary about Maureen Ponderosa. They distinguish them enough that I'm like, yes, that's an Abbott Elementary episode, and that's an It's Always Sunny episode. Them accosting a child in the bathroom and without realizing how terrible that looks is very classic It's Always Sunny. Caitlin Olsen's camera monologue in this at the end shows me Caitlin Olsen has still got it. She is hysterical and always gives her 100% no matter what. She is like one of the greatest comedic actresses of our time. I loved Frank is in a Coma already from the moment I found out about the title, because I think any Sunny fan will eventually notice that there are some Sunny naming conventions for the episodes, and I think this is very much in the same vein as like Frank set Sweet Dee on fire or Sweet Dee has a heart attack, and you kind of know exactly what kind of episode you're in for when you see a title like that. But the thing is, I love seeing it feel like classic Sunny, but then that makes the main character's appearance changes so much more jarring. I originally thought that the cake thing at the beginning was a throwaway, but I appreciated the randomness of it, and I appreciated Frank having an obsession, which I think is one of the core tenets of his character. Also, respectfully, they never explain why they got invited to a gala. Why would Patty's Pub ever be invited to a gala? That doesn't make any sense at all. Dee's arc in this episode is like genuinely amazing. At the beginning, I thought it was very mean-spirited because she was literally telling Frank like, I want you to die. But now I realized that that was set up for a really dramatic arc toward the end when we have like one of the most heartfelt moments in the entire show. Also, people were asking if the cake was real, and turns out on social media it was. It did keep bothering me throughout the episode before I knew the twist that Frank looked so weird, especially from like the lower angle angle, it was disturbing and it gave me like uncanny valley. I genuinely thought that they got like another actor to fill in for Danny DeVito or something and thought we wouldn't notice. The stages of grief framing are like a little bit been there, done that in other media. But I always love a Sunny episode has cards throughout or has some form of a formatting, even like the Dennis system. I really loved his work in Hereditary, so I'm so glad Alex Wolff is in this. He was so unpredictable and like very awkwardly charismatic. And he's one of my favorite character archetypes. Like sort of cool at first, then like slowly reveals his madness. The other characters feel too awkward to bail out. They already committed to too much. Like, yeah, let's do business together. Like the maniac, kinda. Also, that darn drawing is the sweetest thing I've ever seen in this show, especially what I love is it says God on top. She's like, that's where he is. And I'm like, amen. I have a Bible pillow. I love Jesus very much. It made me so happy. Seeing Dee genuinely cry and feel a sense of healing knowing that her father at least loved her at some point was beautiful. And then also the guys, when the nurse says it's time to pull the plug and there's Charlie, Mac, and Dennis fighting for him to live. It's really emotional. And so for these beautiful moments to happen and then be immediately ripped away just for Frank to prove that the gang can't tell the difference between what's real and what's cake, and mocking Dee for crying is a genius reveal and is a great way to continue to double down on how evil Frank is. They've already established how physically disgusting he is, like all these gross things he does. They've already established his terrible business practices. Now Final Insult to Injury is a true example of horrific emotional abuse and selfishness on Frank's part. And I was like, wow, when I really thought they couldn't up the ante. Great episode. Dennis and Mac become EMTs is one of the greatest It's Always Sunny episodes in years. And the reason why I appreciate it so much is because the build-up and foreshadowing in this episode is absolutely masterfully done. So first of all, we start the episode with them like low-key murdering a guy. But now I'm realizing that this was set up for what would happen to the lawyer earlier. Because they're showing that if you feed a man an entire pepper, he's gonna need to go to the hospital. Also, the whole banter of, we are an open bar, when they keep being like, oh, people just keep walking in. It's like, yes, that's what we do. It's very funny. Generally, the gang banter this season has been so much quicker and so much more natural, and it feels like old times. Also, the continuity of Frank checking that the guy who's dying from eating a pepper isn't cake is one of the funniest things ever. Also, this episode brought us the return of the lawyer, who was a character I was not expecting. And seeing him come out with an eye patch made me realize, have we not seen him since the Maureen Ponderosa trial episode? There's also a resurgence of the incredible bit of each member of the gang absolutely never remembering anything they do to anybody, including the waiter, including Cricket. The peppers thing, where they're all eating peppers, is a little weird to me. Why would the incident with the jazz man in the bar make them want to have peppers? I think that little bit of dialogue was written in as the writers to have an excuse of something that would continually up the ante, which is the continuous escalation of the gang's obsession with spice. I also think that it is perfectly in character for them to reject any and all instruction, try to do CPR their way, and then eventually just quit the classes and buy an ambulance. The through line of the song Bambaleo throughout the whole episode is brilliant. I love its continuous use, with each recurrence of it getting more and more extreme. And I must say, the cinematography and the camera work has been so thoughtful and so good this season. The camera is used for incredible foreshadowing. We keep getting shots of the boiling deep fryer water, and we hear it sizzling. And it gets cut to like 3 times by itself, and you just know something is gonna happen with it. So when they put it in the ambulance, even though it doesn't burn Charlie and Dee, you're still kind of on the edge of your seat, like someone's gonna get burned with this thing. The bear parody was also funny. I was a little hesitant at first because I was like, feels a little on the nose. But then I realized that It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia has always had a referential nature to it. There's always been parodies. I mean, literally $100 Baby. But I think I was mainly turned off because any very modern reference is going to feel ham-fisted and on the nose. It was an effective way in joking about how high stakes the bear is, actually making the stakes seem higher in the episode. The camera work as Dee is terrorizing the city on her bike is incredible. We get like this like low angle. It is so deranged, and I love seeing them do creative things with the camera again. Another incredible bit of payoff. At the beginning of the episode, Dennis is like, I don't want to have too much pepper, you could go blind. So we have the payoff of the deep fryer and the pepper making him blind. And all of that paying off in the climax of the episode is incredible. I think that the peppers did end up being a clever way of making things more and more insane and upping the ante more and more. The lawyer has always been a very smart character, and he has been able to overcome the gang before. And so him rejecting the food that Frank made him, I was like, yeah, but I'm scared. And I was right to be scared, because then Frank put peppers in his drink, and it was literally like several fluid ounces of pure ghost pepper juice. So of course he chokes just like the man in the beginning. In the end, him being burnt with the deep fryer was really Rickety Cricket-esque, where he's just getting more and more injured by the gang until he's like unrecognizable. And I suspect they did this because Rickety Cricket is literally so messed up and so hurt that there's almost nowhere to go with him anymore, and the impact wouldn't be as strong. I think they're also using the McPoyles in a similar way. They're trying to find a Rickety Cricket character, and I'm sure they'll land on something soon. I also love that they brought another thing back, which is the terrible chest compressions that Dennis was doing on the lawyer. It all crescendos into this epic climax, and then ends with one of the best endings of the show in years. It is a proper slap in the face ending, where the lawyer gets in trouble because he was very effectively framed by the gang somehow, and he has to go to jail. And the fact that he has to suffer the consequences while the gang gets away with everything is very much akin to Mac kills his dad. This episode was the most fun I've had with It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia since season 13. It is just an incredibly tight 20 minutes. Amazing setups and payoff, including continuations of series-long arcs, and obviously more Dennis and Mac shenanigans, which I will always love. Here are my final thoughts on the season so far. This season feels so much more effortless. I don't know what's happening in that writer's room, but they are really finding a groove. But I hope I'm mistaken, but on Hulu, the season episode list only has 5 episodes, which is 2 less than the previous season. And 2 years ago, the season was just hitting its stride when it was cut down at season 7, which really killed the great momentum it had. 2 years for 5 episodes is frankly criminal. But listen, I can live with this if they're all absolute bangers. These episodes have some of my favorite moments in recent years. The rug pull of the cake and the drawing, Alex Wolff's whole character, and the pan over to him like passed out on the bed, like that's very classic Sunny. The lawyer returning. I can tell that they are having so much fun with these episodes, and it is palpable. I'm so looking forward to these next couple episodes. Look forward to videos about those coming out. I should be releasing one either Thursday or Friday. In the meantime, let me get to my rankings so far. Number 3, we have The Gang F's Up Abbott Elementary. It didn't feel as much like Sunny, not as many like laugh out loud moments. It required supplementary viewing, and so I thought it was really fun, but it was not my favorite. Number 2, Frank's in a Coma. Heartfelt, great twist, super clever, and felt absolutely classic. But I have to put Mac and Dennis become EMTs up here because even some parts of Frank's in a Coma tended to drag. This was just so much fun all the way through, and I absolutely loved it. I just talked about all the things I loved about it. This is my final ranking so far, and I will edit it as the weeks go on. All right, well, that was fun. I'll see you guys in the next one. Please consider becoming a channel member if you want to support me and also would like to see your username shouted out at the end of my videos. Thank you so much for watching. See you soon. God bless you all. Mwah.